Hey, welcome to Unstable Topics, a fast-paced, jam-packed, unhinged bestie podcast filled with facts, reacts, and made-up games in between.
We're your hosts, Sarah
and Maggie.
And we're excited for you to join our best friend hangout, where we surprise one another with things we find interesting or hilarious just to see how the other will react.
Our friendship might be totally stable, but you never know what your bestie might throw your way to knock you off your game.
So come shake things up, learn something new, and laugh along with us. This is Unstable Topics.
You've been lost in the woods for hours now, stumbling around in the dark. You come around the bend and see two people roasting marshmallows over a roaring fire. They see you coming into the clearing and gesture over to pull up a log. Welcome to Campfire Ashes. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jess. Join us as we tell each other our originally written spooky stories around the campfire and then dive into the lore and legends that inspired them. Is it something that goes bump in the night? Is it something menacing lurking past the tree line? Or is it just weird and otherworldly? You'll find it here on Campfire Ashes.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or right here on the Geekscape Network.
Hello! We are here to talk about 1987's opera. This was picked by you, Kyle, correct?
It was, yes. Yeah, the Tony Awards are coming up. I wanted to do some sort of theatrical horror film. Opera was on my list for a while, so I picked it, though I now think there might have been a couple better theatrical horror films I could have picked.
I don't know, man. I enjoyed myself.
Oh, that makes me so happy. That makes me very happy because we've talked Italian horror before, and this, though I will admit that this doesn't feel like the Italian horror that we discuss often, or like not even really like the Giallo stuff that we discuss not liking so much.
To me.
So here's the thing. First of all, we'll start with this. A lot of reviews consider this to be like Dario Argento's last truly like masterpiece film. Something that they all seem to agree on is that the ending of this movie is a little dumb, but otherwise it's pretty good. Yeah, but otherwise I think it's good. My thoughts, and I would love for Kyle as the filmmaker to weigh in on this.
Oh boy.
There was something about the way that this was shot that did not feel Italian to me. It almost felt French to me.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking of stuff like Delicatessen and like Amelie and like kind of those mid 90s like French indie films where it's like close-ups and the camera's like almost in someone's hand at a low angle while they're walking around. Like that doesn't feel Italian to me at all.
No, there's a few aspects of this stuff that feels either one foot in Italian and then beyond, or truly like adjacent and beyond, right? So there's a lot of voyeurism, both literally and then also like looking through people's eyes, right? And then there's also the punishment of the eyes, literally, that has to happen for our characters and us as a viewer to watch. So there's this like French extremism type of thing that's happening too. Carly clocked this before I did, and she was like, "Why are we so low to the ground?" Like in those POV shots, she's like, "Why are we so low to the ground?" And I was like, "Well." I brushed it off initially. I was like, oh, it's an Italian, like it's a Giallo, like POV thing. And then like it kept going and we were so low to the ground. Like we were almost at the person's like hand level. So then I was like, that's interesting because there is so much stabbing and grabbing and the other Giallo things, but it's never that like angle. And then we go beyond. I mean, when we think of Argento, we think of so much color, or like, you know, earlier Argento films, we think of so much color and brightness. And while there's some of that in here, there's this sort of like Victorian and classical. And these are, the art terms are not great, so I'm gonna say probably a bunch of contradictory things. But like the color scheme of everything that's happening, particularly because it's this big opera house, doesn't feel Italian. It just doesn't feel Italian, right? Like it doesn't matter that it's an opera and whatever.
I do think that this is my favorite Argento film. It's this or Phenomenal.
Whoa!
Like I love like mid to late 80s Argento.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know that there are people who are like
he has
literally
eras.
shutting us off.
He has
like
eras
I
for
didn't
sure.
say Suspiria, but
I
like
honestly don't
Suspiria
think
is
that our
gorgeous to look
listeners
at.
the hardcore listeners are not going to be surprised by anything that we say about Argento today.
No, probably not. Well, here's my one sassy note. Sure is a lot of heavy metal in a movie called Opera.
Hell yeah, dude. I completely forgot when those... Dude, I was like, Scott? Yes!
So a lot of the music from this was Claudio Simonetti, which is, I mean, Goblin. But I believe that this was... I want to say this was when there were two versions of Goblin. There's Claudio Simonetti's Goblin, and then there's Goblin, which is basically Claudio Simonetti was like, fuck you guys, I'm out. But I can't quite remember it, how it's set up. I think that the actual score is Claudio Simonetti. A lot of the heavy metal comes from like these bands that nobody knows about. But my favorite song is No Escape by Northern Light. And they were I believe they're a Swedish heavy metal band. And I have wanted to do a Console Crash cover of that for so long. It didn't make its way onto Horrors 3, which is the one that I had with vocals, and I've just never come back to another one with vocals.
Scott, it's so funny. I was thinking about this literally today. It may have even been in the shower. Who knows?
It's when we talk. It's mostly when we think about each other. Just for the
when
listeners,
we think about each other.
You know this is true.
I was thinking that maybe it was time for the Console Crash to fully do the flip, similarly to how you did the slowed Americana version of Rock Until You Drop. Just doing that to like all of the big 80s hair metal horror movie theme songs like Dream Warriors and Leatherface and stuff like that.
Oh man, it's funny that you
Energy from Rock and Roll Nightmare. Is that
no, it would be We Accept the Challenge.
We Accept the Challenge.
Can you imagine a power ballad? I mean, like an acoustic power ballad version of We Accept the Challenge. It's so funny that you mentioned
very extreme of you.
Laz Rocket, Leatherface. Second, because I was like, he's never going to mention that, because that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. Because I always forget about Dream Warriors, because I'm like, I love that song unironically, but I ironically love Laz Rocket, Leatherface. But here's the thing is, I don't know if it would work. I just want to do a straight cover of Trick or Treat by Fastway. From Trick or Treat, 1987. I really want to do a straight cover of Northern Light, No Escape. And also the main theme from Opera is so sick. There's actually a Claudio Simonetti, I want to say it was the 20 year, so it would have been 2007, but he did a live version of it. And it's got like this crazy additional guitar lead in it that's so good, but it would be just absolute hell on earth for me to transcribe the whole thing, so I've just never done it. Well, I want to do a double EP, which is Guitarpenter and Argento, which
yes.
I could do Argento by having Opera on there.
Not Guitar Gento?
No, Guitarpenter and Gent, Djent, is a style of metal, which I don't play, but I just love the play on words with Argento.
Perfect.
So that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I will say that, like, let's compare this to Suspiria, right? Like, that's if anybody's seen at least.
Oh my God.
I was going to say, like, if anybody's.
Wait a second, Kyle. I need a drink for that.
What are you sipping on?
Terror Bird from Rheingeist Brewery, because the best actors in this movie are Ravens.
Are the fucking Ravens. And I have second fiddle because she's just an understudy.
It's true.
Yeah.
I love that the first, is it a death? Does the primary singer get killed? Or does she just get hit by a car?
No, just gets hit by a car.
Yeah.
I wish we could have seen it. It's so funny that it's the only off-screen thing that happens.
Well, so that's what I was going to say. So I want to compare this to Suspiria for just a second, because I feel like if anybody's listening, if this is someone's first horror movie night episode, Sorry, but also like if there's one Argento movie they've seen, it's probably Suspiria. That is like the most mainstream of his films at this point. This movie is so wildly different to me than Suspiria, because Suspiria is so much of the like what could happen. Yeah. And like when something does happen, it's very quick. You know what I mean? Like the body falling through the glass ceiling and hanging, it's like as soon as you see that dead body hang, it cuts to the next. It's a lot of like not showing us too much. Yeah. This shows us everything. And it comes back to that voyeurism that you talked about of like, I don't think it's an accident that we don't see the girl get hit by the car. Right? Because our main character isn't strapped into a situation where she can't look away.
Fair.
Like, so we are the POV of the person that's witnessing this. So we have to watch every grueling moment of those deaths, and especially those first two where it's like the knife through the bottom of the mouth coming out of the inside of the mouth.
Not to mention that it is the first time that we get this eye trauma too. So it's not just the death, it's also the lead up of the death. Both equally, in my opinion, fucking horrific. When we see that knife, which I thought was a pie cutter, go into this mouth and jiggle around a few times. Poof. Yeah. Dude, all the deaths in this are pretty incredible.
So gnarly.
But the part that was the most uncomfortable in the whole movie for me is the seamstress, where it's not even the cutting into her throat to retrieve the bracelet, which I am blown away that she was able to swallow that thing when she was dying.
It was an accident.
Yeah, but still, it's the shot of the scissors just going into the mouth to inspect is
it's
like
shaking around on the teeth.
Yeah,
that was almost my background for the Patreon, and I was like, I don't really think we need that back here. I don't want to look at that at all.
And then, you know, when our killer is revealed at the end, he gets his eyes poked out, or one of his eyes poked out.
That is a super Shakespearean thing. Yeah. Like this movie has so many more layers than Argento normally has, you know?
That's true. That's true.
Which is why the ending feels so dumb and tacked on.
I'm missing something. End. I think that we're missing something. It's so ham-fisted when she... If you haven't seen this movie, fucking pause and come back, because we're going to talk about the kills more, but I really need to understand what you guys think.
I got to unpack this ending. Yeah.
Yes. And I just want to do it now, because if we don't do it now, we're going to go off on some other fucking tangent, and we're not going to come back to it because I know us.
We don't do that, Scott. We don't do that either, but okay.
Yeah. So what about the weather today? Anyway.
Warmer than yesterday. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. So the killer gets away and then finds her in the fucking Alps.
That alone, how did he find this girl just in the middle of fucking nowhere? But yes, continue. That is my first question.
He's a cop.
I was already, it's true.
A one-eyed cop on the run.
Yeah. It's really hard to. Also, who screwed up his eye?
Yeah. Who did this? Who did this to you?
Yes. Well, who fixed him? So, all right. He escapes the burning room and he finds her in the Alps, and then he runs after. He kills her director friend, who may be her boyfriend later on.
Hold on a second. I want to explain this because
don't derail us too much, Matt.
I won't. It's almost hilarious how this is done, because they are on a vacation in a secluded area of the Alps, and she goes out for a walk.
Very Sound of Music.
And then he sees the news report reporting that the autopsy showed that it wasn't his corpse, it was just a dummy that was inside the theater. And it cuts to that shot, the flashback of him just yeeting this like dummy into the fire. But then he just goes, he leans over the railing and just goes, "He's still alive, run!" And just her running through the woods, and then he's just there booking it after.
He's there. He's ready.
Yeah, it's very much
so crazy. It goes to like 1,000 out of nowhere.
It's Monty Python Holy Grail with the guy with the sword running.
It really is. Because and the reason that I think it's so dumb and ridiculous
ruined my double feature
is that, like you said, this is like one of the smartest, well thought out Argento films out there. I think it's really like every shot, every like point of dialogue, every kill is like meticulously thought out. And then this just feels like he turned in the movie and someone was like, we need another ending, kid. And he just was like, all right, fine. And then just tack this on in the last like day of shooting or something.
And
it's
I mean,
so
it doesn't
outrageous.
like
it adds
it has
nothing.
sequel energy, and
Yeah.
it's really awful that it has sequel energy. Like, I don't want. I mean, I know that the Mother of Tears is sort of a trilogy, right? But I don't want a sequel to anything Argento's done. I don't want, you know what I mean? Like, nobody's asked for that. It is a very bonkers ending that I had to take a second to wrap my head around. It took me 2 viewings to finish it, and so I had the last 45 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And man, I did not. And I've seen this before. I've watched this one at least once.
You guys want to know
before.
something? I have never finished this movie until
You
today.
haven't? Yeah. I wonder. It makes me wonder if I actually had. You know what I mean? It was so delirious of an ending that it makes me wonder if I've ever seen the whole thing all the way through.
So, okay,
I
we need
really
to
didn't
unpack-
know who the killer was the whole time.
Here's
So-
the whole I'm going to read the paragraph from Wikipedia, and I want you to think, since Scott already put it out into the ether, let's just think about Monty Python, the Holy Grail. It says, Betty and Marco leave Rome, arriving in Marco's house in the Swiss Alps. However, when Marco hears a television broadcast that the man thought to have been burned alive was not Santini, but a clothed mannequin, he yells for Betty to flee. Betty runs into the nearby woods as Santini is in pursuit. Marco tackles him, only to be stabbed to death. Betty distracts Santini long enough to bash him on the head with a rock, after which the police arrive to take him away. Betty wanders through the empty meadow, finds a lizard trapped in the grass, and frees it, telling it to go free. Even the cops just showing up out of it's not even like a cop shows up. It is like
It's 20 guys.
It's like
They
20
all saw
dudes.
the
And they all
same
want to shoot this
news.
motherfucker.
Yeah. They all saw the same bit of news, and they're like, "Wait, she's in the Alps!" And, like, ran.
How
It is-
the likelihood of 20 cops in the Alps at once is nuts.
It was a retreat. It was a work retreat. They really lucked out.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
it was-
now I got a great double feature. Thank you.
But yes,
I was gonna
the
go with Sound of
ending-
Music, but I got something better now.
The
Oh,
ending.
good. I didn't mean to spoil it.
The absolute
The
the
ending
thing
is
about the
crazy.
ending though is Matt hasn't even gotten there yet.
No, I mean that's the end of the Wikipedia
No, the ending
article.
is her saying that she tells the cops, she lies to the cops and says she doesn't remember that the killer was the teenage lover of her mother who cucked him and made him kill young women for her pleasure, but would never let him touch her. He thinks that and then he killed her mom, and then he thinks that she is the reincarnation of her mother, and that's why he's been killing everybody around her so that they can then finally be together. She says, "Okay, let's get out of here," and then she smacks his head with a rock, and then she lies to the police and says that she doesn't remember, that the guy's crazy. She doesn't, that none of the memories that she regained exist, and then she walks off and is hugging these wildflowers on the ground in the Swiss Alps. And then she says she wants to be like a butterfly in this voiceover. And she finds a trapped lizard who's trapped under what I originally thought was a piece of twine. It's just a piece of, it's just
Great.
a pine branch. She lets him go. And then she's like, "You're free." There has to be so much symbolism there that I don't get. And it has to be Shakespearean. And I am not a Shakespearean guy, so I don't fucking know.
That's the most Italian thing that I've heard is the whole origin story of how we got to this. Like,
Yeah,
that's the most
exactly,
Italian part of the
but-
whole
and she's-
movie. Is that like this
So-
lover is a
It's
reincarnate?
not even what if the lizard was like shedding its skin and she lets shed its skin and then it gets away?
We'd have another
That would
15
make so much
minutes.
more
Maybe
sense.
I bet you there was another 15
Well,
minutes of that.
Release
if
the
I'm gonna-
Argento cut.
if I'm gonna like be a fake therapist here on it,
Do it.
I mean, she
Armchair,
lies.
baby.
Yeah, like I would say that she lies to the cops because she doesn't want to relive that past by discussing it again, because it's not going to be as simple as telling them what happened and then they just say, "Okay, on with your life." Like, she'll be sat
Right.
down and talked about and interviewed and this, that, and another thing. So it's easier to lie. And then the go free, she's talking to Lizard, but she's also talking about herself. Like,
Well, that's
everything
obvious.
in that past
There
is
has to be
gone.
something
But it's like,
Shakespearean, Matt. Like, I will not accept this.
well, I don't have time to look that up. But We're sitting here recording right now, so I
think
got nothing.
I think the biggest thing for me and why I didn't love it as much as I thought I would is, and I think that this is probably oftentimes.
Not enough singing?
How'd you know? Yeah, there's no opera in it at all. There's 2 moments. Anyway, I think that a lot of people's qualms with Argento is that there are fantastic effects and scares, and then there's slog in the middle, right? And like this to me just felt like the most sort of apparent version of that, even though I would also agree in hindsight that maybe like it is the most tight narrative and like linear thing of a lot of his films, but I think that's maybe just what I don't go towards his films for that, which is maybe why I don't like that later era of like the 2000s where they are truly more crime giallos and we're trying to do all this. Like I think I really love the more atmospheric Argento than I do the more story driven. And while opera is probably the best marriage of those things, I don't think I was expecting it. I also was thinking that I forgot that it was 87. I thought it was like 91, 92. Not that that should sway my opinion of it at all, but it was just what the mindset that I was in when I was watching it. I was just like, what is happening? But again, like he does not go lightly on these kills, particularly in this one. Like I fast forwarded through the first eye trauma. I couldn't do it. Eye trauma, lowercase I, capital T trauma.
It was Kyle trauma too.
All right,
But here's the thing:
Scott,
is
I'm
that-
gonna try to answer your question. I did some very quick googling.
Wait, before you do that, real quick, if we're talking about eye trauma in this movie, I'm gonna make a bold horror statement. If I'm gonna, ape Rebecca McKendry's phrase, I think that this is the most beautiful gunshot wound kill I've ever seen on film.
Oh,
it's incredibly shot.
It's incredible. It really is.
That in itself makes this movie for me. I hate gun violence in horror movies. I think it's stupid. I just complained about it in the Mummy episode. This is just because you see the bullet go through the chamber and then it shoots her in the eye, and then you see its trajectory right next to Betty's the girl's name?
Betty's our main character. Yeah.
And it like hits the table next to her, and it's genius. Absolutely genius.
What it is, Scott, is it's the backhand of the slasher of the knife or whatever weapon coming down. It's the most slasher use of a gun.
Yes.
That is that I've seen.
And that's why I like slashers, because I fucking hate guns. I'd much rather see someone get stabbed.
Right. But it's that gleam. It's the gleam of the blade or whatever
it's
it is.
very silent. Or Black Christmas with the unicorn kill.
Yes.
That's exactly. You're right.
Yeah.
All right, Matt.
No, that's
give
fun.
Me
So
give me the tea, buddy.
So here's what I did. I went to IMDb trivia and I scrolled all the way down to the bottom for spoilers because I thought, all right, maybe someone wrote something there. And what I read was this. The ending of the movie was inspired by the ending of Thomas Harris's book, Red Dragon. In an interview, Dario Argento stated that he did not like Michael Mann's Manhunter, the first film adaptation of Red Dragon, which used a completely different ending than the one that was in the novel, which was one of Argento's favorites. So then I hop over to Wikipedia and I read the final paragraph for Red Dragon.
Wait, hold on. Carly and I are semi-reading this. I'm actually gonna. Okay.
No. Okay. Well, I was gonna say this isn't that much of a spoiler. This is like an epilogue. It just says, spoiler alert, Graham doesn't die, I guess. So it said, during his recovery, Graham has a flashback to a visit that he made at the site of a major battle during the American Civil War, shortly before apprehending Garrett Hobbs, a serial killer he was investigating before Hannibal Lecter. Graham has an epiphany about the indifference of nature and decides that it is not nature that is haunted by events, but the people who lived it that become haunted. So I think that that's maybe what he was trying to say, is like she's going to be forever haunted by all this, but like that doesn't mean that she can't let nature continue to do what nature does by like being there with the animals and wishing that she was a butterfly.
Shit, okay. All right, I buy that for $1.
Hey, welcome to Unstable Topics, a fast-paced, jam-packed, unhinged bestie podcast filled with facts, reacts, and made-up games in between.
We're your hosts, Sarah
And Maggie.
and we're excited for you to join our best friend hangout, where we surprise one another with things we find interesting or hilarious just to see how the other will react.
Our friendship might be totally stable, but you never know what your bestie might throw your way to knock you off your game.
So come shake things up, learn something new, and laugh along with us. This is Unstable Topics.
You've been lost in the woods for hours now, stumbling around in the dark. You come around the bend and see two people roasting marshmallows over a roaring fire. They see you coming into the clearing and gesture over to pull up a log. Welcome to Campfire Ashes. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jess. Join us as we tell each other our originally written spooky stories around the campfire and then dive into the lore and legends that inspired them. Is it something that goes bump in the night? Is it something menacing lurking past the tree line? Or is it just weird and otherworldly? You'll find it here on Campfire Ashes.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or right here on the Geekscape Network.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
Well, speaking of buying things for $1, if you were renting this movie and it was a second rental for $1, what movie would y'all grab to watch as your double feature?
Kyle, hit us.
That's Paganini horror, baby.
Yeah!
That's absolutely what I'm going with. A little more fun, a little bit of music, a little bit of Italia. Don't say that. I'm sorry. Italian. I just think that it'd be fun. It's just bonkers.
Yeah, good old-fashioned panini horror. I love it. Okay, well, I'm torn between two, which is why I threw to Scott, but I don't think he's going to pick either one of these. So I'm just going to say both of them. What I had written down while watching this movie is a film that I don't think we're ever going to do for the show because it's a little too dour, but I feel like it makes sense as a matching, which is Mute Witness from 1990. But as we've been talking more about this movie and the slasher within the opera and the heavy metal music and all that, I'm going to throw back to one of the first movies we ever did on Horror Movie Night, 2014 Stage Fright starring Meatloaf.
See, that was originally what I was going to go with. And I was like, you know what? I don't think that would be making my night because that movie isn't actually very fun.
But it has one of my favorite moments in any heavy metal horror movie, which is, of course, when the killer is attacking her in the kitchen and he's got a guitar around his neck. And then as he's doing his song, he starts playing a killer guitar solo in the middle of the song and then stops, takes his knife, and shoves it into the middle of the guitar as a capo. So that he can play a crazier guitar riff.
Incredible. That's incredible.
Just
Have you guys ever watched
Kyle,
that's the highlight of the movie.
The bar is way higher than you expect it to be.
I remember that movie coming out and being really, really stoked about it, never going to it, and then hearing some sort of just like a wet fart of a review of it. And
it's not good.
Have you ever done Slovae's Stage Fright?
Nope. No.
Okay.
We need to, because I think that it's a good movie. I mean, it's kind of cheesy and it's a nice low budget, but it's like kind of a good movie.
It would be right up there.
I always keep walking past it, you know.
Yeah. No, it's been on my long list.
I
think it's been on all of our long lists.
But it's a great movie because it's not a good movie. Fucking Night Killer. That's what I want my double feature to be.
There we go.
Yeah.
Fuck yes.
That just made Kyle open another beer.
Let's go, Night Killer.
Well, Night Killer you might remember from the back catalog of Horror Movie Night, which means that if you go to HMN Podcast and scroll around
it's
on
episode
TikTok.
421.
Well, there you go. But you can also go to HMN Podcast on TikTok, and you can find some delightful TikToks we made on that specific episode. Some of my favorite TikToks, honestly. And then
did we do something stoner related for 420? Did we for episode 420?
Did
we fuck that up?
We fucked that up. We totally fucked that
up.
Well,
one of us was probably stoned watching. So one of us was probably stoned watching the movie.
Yeah, it's probably me.
No, hey, real quick, I got to tell a small story from Creature Feature Weekend that I want to give a big old shout out to Camp Nightmare for keeping our boy Kyle in the sauce while we were, so to speak, in
Functional.
the Doritos. No, Rain Manning us during our live events, during Creature Feature weekend. But so Friday night we have a great time live with them. Then on Saturday morning, we're at the table, and Kyle looks over at me, and I'm like, oh, okay. And so I walk over to Camp Nightmare's table because they were like 4 tables away from us, and I walk up and I look at Jordan, and JB's talking to somebody. I look at Jordan, I'm like, did you get my co-host high this morning? All right, JB goes, which one? And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he goes, well, I don't know. Matt seems like he could party. I'm like, that dude's never even drank a beer. What the fuck? And so I feel like it was a real learning experience for the Camp Nightmare boys that morning.
Kyle, I want to answer your question. While not intentional, episode 420 was the kickoff of Listener Submitted Month, and we did Maximum Overdrive, which, I mean, that feels like that counts.
That's a different kind of high for sure. Yeah, okay, fantastic. It makes me feel good.
All right, but yeah, check out our back catalog at
that as an answer.
hmnpodcast.com. You can also buy some T-shirts and merch and all that good stuff, and then hit up our Patreon while you're at it.
Begging me for a Silly Goose shirt, so I gotta order one for her.
Yeah, baby.
You don't have to order one.
Listen, for the listeners, we all buy our own merch.
That's true. I pay money every time I put a shirt. That is true.
Yeah, okay.
Scott and I pay enough money that we get the shirts.
Listen, the illusion is that we buy our own merch.
All right. Well, Kyle.
Yeah.
What do you got to recommend to wrap up our episode here on opera?
Okay. So, I watched... I'm a big Ken Russell fan. It's been a long, long time since I watched The Devils. And I was thinking that it was still available on Shudder. I was thinking that it was available on Criterion. None of these things existed, but I did have a lovely, lovely bootleg DVD that claims it's the uncut version, and I can tell that there is stuff... I didn't do the deep dive that I maybe would have because I was casually watching it. I was trying not to put too much stake in watching it, right? Because I think that's
a mistake.
That would be a mistake. That's a common thing. Our friend of the show, Jeanette, was over. We, Carly hadn't seen it, and she had suggested to Carly a lot. So we were all ready to watch it, right? But in the same breath, maybe. I'm gonna say I've definitely had it on because I owned it and I had this copy and I remember being excited about it. But I don't think I knew the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, it's not like something that you put on lightly. I've never watched the whole thing. I've seen 2 scenes, and I have been putting it off. And you know how much I love nun horror, so.
And yes, right. And I think that I could tell that this copy that I own, and it's not like there's no distributor that I can point to. There's no whatever, right? It probably was a convention buy, honestly, but there's a distinct difference between the VHS rip that I think most of it is, and then a transfer that then goes to widescreen, and there's
so you think it does have more material?
It does for sure have more material.
And
I knew that by the end of the movie because I was like, oh, I'm feeling this is fucked.
I really want to watch The Devils in full. I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna I
think it's an okay. I think it's an okay way to watch it.
Well, here's the thing: is that there's a version on archive.org that I have bookmarked that I'm when I get the courage up and I don't have and I have an empty stomach, I'm gonna sit down and watch it. Yeah. And I'm gonna follow it the next day with Flavia the Heretic. It's gonna be a bad fucking weekend, right?
Beautiful double feature. I think that it is an incredibly interesting film. It's super well made. It gives me vibes of Witchfinder General. But it's Ken Russell, and it has this sort of ability to reach into the real big darknesses of things. But then it also has this frenetic energy that happens, particularly in the last act of the film, that is for me now as a person stronger in their faith, I can, me. I talk about it on the show a lot. I can really handle and stomach a lot of things. that maybe on paper would go against my faith or my beliefs, right? And
but you're not Catholic, right?
I'm not Catholic, so I do have
there
that.
is a little buffer there.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, there is a buffer, but there's still a good chunk of blasphemy that I'm
for sure,
just
yeah.
like, you know, there's no bad feelings. Not that it matters, but like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no, like, I'm not walking away from the Devils being like, oh my God, right? Like, you know, but I was like, wow.
It takes something like, I feel like I don't get offended by blasphemy at all.
Yeah.
I more often than not I'll get a chuckle out of it and entertainment out of it.
Yeah, right.
What offends me more than anything is, and I understand why it happens, but it's always tough, is a generalization that all people who have any type of spirituality are like dumb or hateful, because I feel like I've done a lot to try to prove the opposite in my life. So it's like, even though I know that it's not a direct attack on me, it always still feels like it in a way that like affects me. Like when there's like I'll tell you, it was a tough time to have any type of faith and be on the internet when Roe v. Wade got overturned.
For sure, yeah.
It was like every single status, I'm sitting there reading people's statuses and being like, I agree with you, but like, why does this feel pointed at me? Because it's like, every person who ever goes into church, this is your fault.
Well, no, and I think that I think that, no, you're completely right. You're completely right.
That's
and I think
the stuff that's tough for me.
when there's an ignorance, but there's this sort of like ignorant generalization that can happen. And, you know, it's like, and Scott, this is why I love talking to you about this stuff, because it's like, you do have the education and the basis for a lot of this stuff. And I think that there is, God, I'm going to sound like a curmudgeon, but there is a generational gap of people not being raised in faiths and then having such a strong opinion about being raised in a faith that I struggle with. And I think it's because I came from that. I think it's because I came from that and I understand that now. Anyway, the Devils, Ken Russell certainly understands, or at least is educated enough in this story to then like apply that. And it just gets fucking heavy, right? And then, you know, Jeanette had seen it in totality before and was like also discussing some of it. Carly being so educated in a seminary and having all this, and like, it was just a really cool experience. But then also I was just like, I am high and I am like
maybe
watching
not
this and it is heavy. I
honestly don't know the mindset that you're supposed to be in to watch something like The Devils.
No, I don't know either. I honestly don't know either. I don't know.
I don't think that anybody has that right answer, you know?
No, there's no right answer, which makes it, when I lean over to Jeanette and I'm like, my recommendation, like, have you ever seen Solo? Like, I'm like, we're watching this and I'm like, oh, you know, if you like The Devils, you might like Solo. That's when you have a fucking, like, that's when it feels weird.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's just so
The
funny
Devils
to me
is
that I've seen Solo. I've survived Solo, but I've never watched The Devils. I think it's also because Solo is so much more depraved in its historical aspect that The Devils is harder to find. It's truly harder to find.
Yes.
And the funny thing is that now I have to give another shout out to Colors in the Dark, because Rebecca McKendry, I listened to this episode when they were ranking their top 10 religious horrors. It was just Catholic horrors.
I have to listen to it. Yeah.
It's such a good episode because, I mean, I fast forwarded through their kind of like their BSing at the beginning, like 45 minutes or whatever, where they're just kind of catching up on what
have they watched that week?
What have they watched recently?
Like the first
and then they
45
get into
minutes
their
of every episode.
Yeah. But Rebecca made a really, really good point. I think it was Rebecca that made the point. She said, religious people that hate religious horror don't realize that the good guys always win. God always fucking wins at the end.
It's true.
And for me, it was really crazy to me because, you know, I am a raging atheist. You guys know that. I'm sure that even the most casual of listeners. But I love religious horror because it scratches a weird itch, because the ritual aspect of Catholicism in particular is so deeply ingrained in my fucking psyche that watching it it's like, it's perverse in that way, because I remember, like, I was watching The First Omen and they were doing prayers and I was like, I know these prayers. And I'm watching, stuff where I think that as someone who grew up in the faith, the blasphemous nature of it is so much more delicious. Because I remember being like, oh, I'm not supposed to think about these things. But it's also so funny because we're coming at it from, the two of you guys are coming at it as almost diametrically opposed to what I'm coming at it. But you guys are walking away with like almost a diametrically opposed good feeling that I'm getting in the first 2 acts. Yeah. And it's so funny because like I hate the end of the Sentinel. I hate the end of the Sentinel. But I also really don't know how I feel about things like The First Omen or Immaculate or I don't know, Rosemary's Baby even, stuff where, because Rosemary's Baby, the bad guys kind of win.
They do win. Yeah.
But I also don't know how I feel about that ending.
Yeah. I feel like in a weird way we're coming from 3 different angles, right? Because you have the staunch atheist. I feel like Kyle is pretty, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're pretty set in what you're.
I would call Kyle devout.
Yeah, sure. And I am constantly like walking this line of like spirituality, wanting to, I've said before, like, if I live my life based off the teaching of Jesus, regardless if he's a real person or not a real person, it's still good advice on how to live life. Like, it's like, be loving, be kind. Like
that's not dogma.
That's not dogma, and that's because
problem.
Well, that's the thing, because what makes me uncomfortable, the one thing that makes me uncomfortable every time that I'm in church doing the live stream services is when it's like the call to worship, where it's like a call and response thing, and I'm like, this just feels icky to me. Or like the unison
You've
prayers,
never been in a
or
Catholic church, have you, dude?
Well, I've been in a Catholic church, and that's why I really don't like that. But I think that's
you roadrunner out of there.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's because it's like for this minute in the middle of the church service, it feels like a Catholic church service, and like the dogma of a Catholic church service really has always been unsettling to me. And then, I don't know, it's a whole. Kyle, there is a quote that you said in one of your very first episodes. I think it was honestly the Stigmata episode, but I think about it all the time, where you said like it's crazy that someone could discover religion and have it be like this eye-opening experience where they like lead with love and they're so kind and giving and they want to like do all this good, and then a totally different person can also discover religion and just be a monster to society because of it. Like
power.
It's like,
mad.
Well, and
power, but they found not
to
religion.
bring it back to the devils, it's very that, because there is this pull for political power that drive, like, again, Jeanette was being like, this is happening, and it's like I agreed and I disagreed on some, but I understand and I get it, and I think there's a poignancy to the devils. There's a poignancy to probably even fucking like The First Omen. Like, if we're like,
did I even talk about The First Omen on the show? I did. Okay, I was like, did I?
I think that like so. It's a very interesting film. It's a very interesting film.
Right. I'm going to piggyback off of what you reviewed, because mine also has to deal with the devil, and it also has to deal with me disagreeing a little bit with Jeanette's assertion of it.
You watched Anthony Hopkins' The Right.
I did. No, I watched Late Night with the Devil. It's on Shudder. I gave it a watch. And yes, I'll address the elephant in the room. Like, yeah, it's kind of fucked up that they used some AI art in the movie.
I already mentioned both you guys about that at Creature Feature Weekend.
Dude, mad.
My thing is like, I don't know.
But I understand, and I'm mad that I understand.
That's kind of where I'm at too.
But it's
like I get it. Like, I feel like I'm more mad at a large studio who has all the money in the world to pay an artist to like paint a please stand by sign for the movie, more than like a small independent film where it's like, I don't know, that could be a couple $100 that they need for something else when they can just shit it out. But
they can find $300.
I know.
I said that to you at Creature Feature Weekend. I don't think it's an excuse. That's my take on it. But regardless, The movie
regardless,
outside of the stupid bullshit AI stuff.
The movie outside of the bullshit AI stuff is really fucking good. And it's like this perfect marriage of what Chris LaMartine is doing and what Ghostwatch is, like melded into this film. And I just think it's really smart in how it's done. I think I gave it like 4 stars out of 5. Like I was like, this was really, like I would watch it again. Like and I think it was well paced. What I was afraid the movie would be, and this is like not really a spoiler, but I'm just going to explain. Like, I thought that this movie was going to be like, this guy's doing a show, here comes the girl, creepy shit the entire show. And it's not. It's so beautifully paced with like bringing in the psychic who like is trying to read people's minds for a little bit, and then bringing in the guy who's going to disprove everything and interviewing him for a little bit and making it really feel like a late night talk show for the first 30 minutes of the movie, and then getting into it. And the movie starts off with a voiceover narration saying like, this is the lost tape of the last taping of this show. This is the raw, unedited footage. So it has this cool effect where it'll be in color when it's live, and then it goes to like a sepia tone when it's like the conversations that they're having on the set while commercials are playing.
That's smart.
And
I was wondering
like,
how they were going to sort of like divvy that up. Okay.
And that's how and I'm like, I like that this feels so authentically real to like what that time period would look like, how that time period would feel. It's pulled from a lot of real people who would appear frequently on these late night shows that were going up against the Tonight Show. So it's interesting. And then I'm not going to get into too much of the twist, but one of the podcasts that I do, I edit a podcast called Just the Tipsters. It's a true crime podcast that mostly focuses on currently active cases and trying to rally people who might live in that area to, if they know anything, to like report that and try to close that case. But every once in a while she'll do like, oh, I thought of this thing and wanted to bring it up. And it was actually the episode I was editing at Creature Feature Weekend was not tied to any true crime or any murder, but one of the plot points in the beginning of the movie is that the host of this show hung out at the Grove. And she did this whole episode about like what the Grove was. And it's really interesting knowing like, oh, this was like a real thing that was a real big deal in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, where like all these rich people and politicians and entertainers would go to this like almost like a stonemasons type place and rub elbows with each other. And like just putting that tiny little detail in there and it being like, if you don't know, it doesn't change anything. But if you do know, it informs a lot more about that character just by saying like, oh, he's a member of the Grove. And you're like, oh, okay. Like very, very smart. Liked it a lot. Gonna quickly mention something that I didn't like that much because we covered the movie in the last year is I finally read the book Psycho 2 by Robert Bloch. Real bad.
Got the nurse. They got the nurse on the cover. The step back cover with the nurse. Yeah.
It's a
R.I.P.
nun,
horror
actually.
finds.
It's a nun. It's not a nurse.
Excuse me, a nun.
It's a nun.
Oh, never mind.
It is so bad. Like when you're reading about the book, it says like the studio was like, you really shouldn't put this out. And this was like what he wrote to be Psycho 2 and they rejected it. And they rejected it with good reason because like I thought like, oh, he must have wrote some scathing thing about the entertainment industry. And he does. Like it's about someone trying to stop a Norman Bates movie from being made. But like he leaned into so much SA throughout this book. And like, I'm going to spoil it. Like Norman Bates isn't the killer. He actually dies off page in the beginning of the book, but he's used as like the red herring throughout the entire book. And it's actually his psychiatrist now has developed a split personality from working with Norman. So like, God. It's just like, I was just like, what the fuck is this book?
I don't necessarily, I mean, for like this was 80 something or other.
Yeah, early 80s.
Psycho 2. Yeah. I don't hate that they're like, the mental health professional actually got like influenced by their patient. But otherwise, I don't love the SA part of that.
Yeah,
and I don't love that, like, I mean, nobody gave Psycho 2 any love. Like, you know what I mean? Like Robert Bloch didn't get like, a nice like comeuppance for Psycho 2.
No,
so
it
that
kind
tracks.
of it kind of ruined his career.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, if you're curious, don't pick up the 380-page book. Just read the Wikipedia plot summary and call it a day.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for that.
I'm giving you all the approval. And I checked Goodreads. A lot of people seem to agree with me on this one. A lot more 1 and 2 star reviews than 4s and 5s.
Yeah.
So, Scott, I think I know what you're going to talk about. So
No, you don't.
Okay, you're changing your mind last
Yes,
second.
I'm changing my. It is my prerogative, baby. So, have you ever wondered if cryptids fuck? I have the answer.
I mean, that's my number one question.
Okay,
how do they find each other? Is it like a Tinder situation? How do they find each other?
I don't
and then
think
two,
that you realize
do they get it on?
That consent is not part of cryptids' MOs, buddy.
Okay. Yeah.
Man, Frogman
Makes sense.
2023 is a found footage film that answers that question for y'all. It's not good. It is not as good as TikTok horror influencers were saying it was, but I still had a little bit of fun watching it. Because if you know nothing about the Loveland Frog is a frogman, so about probably a 4.5 foot hunched over large frog cryptid. He has a magic wand and apparently psychic abilities, which is the fucking wildest power set I have ever heard for a cryptid. But so they go to Loveland, Ohio, and they are trying to find it. And as with all
Frogman is like a Loveland or is an Ohio thing.
Frogman is from Loveland, Ohio. It is the Loveland, Ohio cryptid. Yes.
I literally have a hoodie.
Sorry, Scott. I just needed to know.
I have a hoodie from a Cincinnati radio station, WEBN. It's one of the oldest still active rock radio stations in America. And their logo is literally a frog.
Incredible.
Because of the frogmen.
And I was just at the Akron punk rock flea market, and there were not one, not two, but 3 vendors with Loveland Frog merchandise. I did not buy a single piece of it, but they all had the frog with the wand. The wand is super important.
The wand is important. It's not
Yeah, the wand is not just a joke. It is serious business. But so the movie sucks because the movie sucks until about 15 minutes before the end, and then it gets fucking wild. I'm not going to say that it gets good, but it does get entertaining. And I definitely scrubbed a lot in the first hour of the movie. All right. That's why I made this movie work for me. Because it's found footage. So obviously the actors can't act. Some of the additional power sets that the Loveland Frogman has is a cult, a reproductive cult that lives in the basement of that practices in the catacombs beneath the basement of the one and only bed and breakfast in Loveland, Ohio.
And I need this is going to be specifically for the hosts and for the people paying for the video on Patreon. But I went onto the Loveland Frogman Wikipedia page, and the main photo says artist's rendition of Frogman.
Hell yeah! Frogman has skinny fucking legs.
Yeah, it's a Photoshop. Photoshop was the name of the artist, I believe.
Oh my god. Okay, wait. So this reproductive cult
they succeed in some ways.
Dad?
Frogman
Daddy is my question.
I'm guessing yes, because there are young girls who are his.
It's a little Manson-y.
Yes. But he also has the ability to mutate adult humans as well. So we get a little body horror. We get a lot of body horror, actually.
Really?
So Frogman 2023.
Okay.
Soft suggest. Soft
if this sounds good to you, it'll probably be good to you. If it sounds awful, it sounds awful.
It still might be good.
I also want to read
if you're from Ohio, you'll love it.
Here's another quick thing off the Wikipedia page. Under the in fiction portion of the Loveland Frogman Wikipedia page, it says, in May of 2014, the Loveland Frog legend was made into a musical titled Hot Damn, It's the Loveland Frog.
Let's bring it back. I'm going to suggest it for the high school.
Oh, man. I completely should have put this in our promo section, but Beach Creeper, the surf rock
album.
cryptid band from Chris and Melissa LaMartina.
It's already out by the time this episode comes out. Go buy it. Go get a copy of Beach Creeper's album.
Beachcreeper.bandcamp.com or just message Chris LaMartina.
So stoked.
Fuck yeah. And speaking of beach creepers, there's going to be something creeping on a beach next week, so stay tuned for more Horror Movie Night.
Hey, welcome to Unstable Topics, a fast-paced, jam-packed, unhinged bestie podcast filled with facts, reacts, and made-up games in between.
We're your hosts, Sarah
And Maggie.
and we're excited for you to join our best friend hangout, where we surprise one another with things we find interesting or hilarious just to see how the other will react.
Our friendship might be totally stable, but you never know what your bestie might throw your way to knock you off your game.
So come shake things up, learn something new, and laugh along with us. This is Unstable Topics.
You've been lost in the woods for hours now, stumbling around in the dark. You come around the bend and see two people roasting marshmallows over a roaring fire. They see you coming into the clearing and gesture over to pull up a log. Welcome to Campfire Ashes. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jess. Join us as we tell each other our originally written spooky stories around the campfire and then dive into the lore and legends that inspired them. Is it something that goes bump in the night? Is it something menacing lurking past the tree line? Or is it just weird and otherworldly? You'll find it here on Campfire Ashes.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or right here on the Geekscape Network.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.